Good morning. Welcome into Wingin It Wednesday. I'm Rob Kirkpatrick here. Bernie is out. It's kind of a weird day today because, she's not here. It's kind of like having a substitute teacher.
Her absence in my presence makes it weird, right?
Well, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
A much less attractive substitute teacher.
Well, thank you, Stafford.
So we are all here. Hold on. Let's see. Is that better? Hold on. Is that better? Yeah, that's way better.
There you go.
All right. Sorry. There's a lot of buttons in here for me to manage, and without Bernie here, I'm not going to promise to have her skill or ability. But anyway, we're going to start. Good morning, guys. By the way, Carol Ross, Warren Cottle, and Stafford Barnett are here with us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Everybody survived last week okay?
Yes.
Anything you need to share with the class? Warren, it's usually you.
Nothing for show and tell.
Nothing for show and tell.
No, had a armadillo ran over in the road not too far from my house.
Okay.
I'll have that post up on KBL 965 within the hour.
One quick thing, Brigadier General Robert LeBlanc is in Washington to receive the Congressional Gold Medal today.
We are actually going to play your interview from Veterans Day.
On Friday.
Yeah, we pulled it, and we're going to air it in the 8 o'clock hour.
We're going to do it on Thursday or today?
No, we're going to air it today.
Right.
He's there today.
Okay, yeah, well, we can live stream it on my show.
It's pretty cool when... It's pretty cool when a company steps up. We know he was delayed, and his flight ended up being canceled, his Delta flight up to D.C., and LHC Group came through, and there are pictures with him standing next to a private jet, which is pretty cool.
Well, my brother-in-law left yesterday, and he'll be up there with him.
Oh, cool. Yeah. That's awesome. So they're both going to be there.
They're both going to be there.
Well, good, because both of them are in the interview, so we'll play it coming up in the next hour. Really cool. All right, so let's talk about a national topic that's kind of around. It involves Facebook. The group that was used by the Trump campaign seems to be kind of falling apart. This company is trying to save face over in the UK. They have suspended the CEO who was caught on video explaining how some of this stuff works and how they can kind of change the mindset of voters and rig elections. Not rig them, but influence them. He's now saying he was just kind of having a good time and he knew he was being recorded. However, he's being suspended. But I thought the interesting part was how he said one of the questions they asked about the candidates, and he said, the candidates don't know. The groups that pay us know what's going on, but the candidates are kind of the puppet, which almost kind of seems to lend itself to Trump not thinking anything happened. Carol, we'll start with you. What does this make of it, especially on the Cambridge Analytica stuff? Then we'll talk about Facebook coming up.
Well, this guy, it wasn't just what he said, it was the way he said it.
Yes.
I mean, he
pretty sure of himself.
Worse than that, scatological, obscene, the whole bit. I mean, he was awful. And should have been bounced. But when have you ever heard a political consultant claiming that they really ran the show and the candidates didn't know? We did it all, and especially these online guys. It was a great
sales pitch.
Oh, of course it was. And so whether that's true or not, I don't know. But however, the part about the whole thing about the influence elections. Well, any candidate who's not getting to influence an election any way he can, either digital or on air or however he's doing it,
in states
that's
that
what he wants
visiting.
to do. Well, yeah.
Well, it's true. I mean, there are some states that we know the Clinton campaign didn't go to.
Exactly.
Despite the fact
she didn't use social media very well either.
Bill said you got to go, Hillary.
But anyway, bottom line is you bought something online, they've got your profile, kiddo. It doesn't matter. So as soon as you go online for anything, Granny ain't giving up Facebook. Granny wants photos of those kids every day. Send them every day. So that's a whole different usage than we're talking about here. But I think it's really going to be hard to unpack Facebook or any other social media. And look, Google is worse. Well, Google is just as bad, let's say, in terms of data mining and how they choose who gets on, what gets on, that kind of thing. It's subtle in a lot of ways, but it's pervasive, and so it really does need to be looked at. Tucker Carlson has been doing a great series on how the tech giants have pretty much taken over from government as the overall influencers or controllers.
Yeah, but don't you think if the tech giants were really doing a good job, Hillary would have won? If they were trying to do
No,
the
not
same
necessarily,
thing,
because she still wasn't there. The presence, you can do
Yeah.
all the social media you want, but they have to see you. The voters want to see you. And Trump, look, he was indefatigable. He was doing 4 and 5 a day.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a lot to be said for that.
Stafford, is this just the 21st century way that campaigns are going to be run? Is there really any way to say, okay, we're not going to do that anymore?
It is the way until people get off of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. This is the way it's going to be. I don't necessarily feel the same for Twitter. I feel like Twitter governs themselves a little bit stronger than everybody else. But you got to remember, this is a sociological interrupter, right? So the movable type printing press was a sociological interrupter, right? When people could start printing their own Bibles in English and interpreting for themselves. And we saw it happen in Germany during that time and during Europe. And a lot of clashes broke out, right? And before before fake news was being trumpeted by the Trump campaign, that was things that people were identifying online that they'd had to go back and say, hey, this is not true. You're spreading false information. And this is a lot of stuff that we saw at Cambridge Analytica, the Russian bots that are still active, right? They're still all over Twitter. They've got people who are identifying them now. And the reality is that what Cambridge Analytica did really isn't anything new. They just had new tools. But what the reason they're getting in trouble is because of the way that they grabbed users' data, right? So when you do these like face swap deals or what would I look like as a man, or like what am I going to be?
Who's my best friend
How
ever?
am I going to die? Right.
Yep.
And that's the one, right?
Those are the ones that grab everything.
Right. And so Cambridge Analytica put that out there, and then it grabbed all of your friends' data, which was against the rules for Facebook, and then refused to give that data back 2 years ago. So Facebook have known about this for a long time, right? So Facebook's paying the price for this. They've lost $50 billion in stock value in the past 2 days. He's been summoned to the UK to answer to Parliament because they feel that Cambridge Analytica had a big part in Brexit and many European votes as well. And if you listen to the proponents, the people who are against Brexit, it's the same type of words that you're hearing coming out of the people who were against Trump. There was a lot of racism, a lot of nationalism, a lot of fear-mongering going on that kind of created that exit vote.
So, Warren, I want to ask you, does this whole thing, it's one thing to go to a town hall meeting and you see people in person and you hear what people's concerns are, and maybe you talk through them, or maybe you just totally disagree with them. It seems like what Cambridge Analytica did with their group is make you think everyone thinks this way about someone, and it may not be the case, and that's on both sides. So what do you think? I mean, how do they operate? And we would be stupid to think they're the only ones doing it.
Isn't it strange that when these things happen, it's always the losing side who cries foul? If you go back to when Barack Obama came on the scene, and he was just being heralded by the left, by the liberals, for being such an acute, smart, intelligent campaigner, and his campaign was so high tech and real world, and how they were getting all of this money coming in off of the web, and the Republican side was claiming foul because they couldn't track the money, and a lot of that money was probably coming from overseas. Nobody knew where it was coming from, and they said, well, we just have so much coming in, we can't track it. And the Federal Election Commission says, that's right, it's just so much money going in, and we can't track it. And so the other side was hollering foul, 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 on and on and on. And so now the Trump campaign comes along and outsmarts everybody, and which they did. And not only that, but they had a superb candidate. I go back to that meme where we got the picture of that woman, looks like she's from the 1950s, when she said, my husband and my son or my brother or my boss didn't make me vote for Donald Trump. Bill Clinton's wife caused me to vote for Donald Trump. And, they all got these things where when the losing side comes back with all of these different reasons why that we lost. And, let's go back to the 1950s or whenever. Let's go back to the 30s or 20s, whenever they first started advertising on a new technology called radio. When I think it was Arthur Godfrey who was on there advertising cigars, I think, or a cigar company, advertised on Arthur Godfrey's show, and the next day they literally sold out of cigars in Philadelphia, wherever that was. And so then everybody said, wow, this thing may be something real. And so then they created all of that. Then the TV ads came along, and for years, people hooped and hollered about the lies they were telling you in those ads of all this new and improved, and using these half-naked women out there to sell pickup trucks and on and on and on, how horrible it was. And then when the political consultants came in, the same thing. Richard Nixon didn't believe in television. Roger Ailes told him, said, if you don't want television advertising, blah, 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 he said, you don't even need to get in the race. And he said, well, television is here to stay. And it's just a continuing process. So now Trump comes along really and truly and hires the people who did a superb job of doing what they were supposed to do. And now everybody else cries foul. And as Carol said, political consultants, I've never seen one yet who didn't want to take credit for everything.
Exactly. And believe me, this narrative continues to be pushed because, of course, it's one more way to excuse Hillary for losing the election. I mean, that's really what a lot of this plays down to. We've got to give her some legitimacy for claiming that somebody stole it from her. We don't know who, but somebody did. So let's find another. Let's find another culprit. And here we go, Cambridge Analytica.
Well, I think that I'd like to point out too, the Democrats are addressing this in that if you listen to some of the younger Democrats that are getting out in media, they're saying point blank that she did it to herself, and that by putting Debbie Wasserman Schultz in there and by rigging the election for her,
Stafford,
that they screwed themselves on this.
Well, they did, but also they keep floating her as maybe she's going to run again. Don't you think that puts the fear?
Not going to run again.
Well, no,
not
but
real
what
people.
I'm saying is that she, they're saying some of her cronies are saying that, and I would imagine that's putting the fear of God into the younger generation.
I don't think they would ever let it happen again.
I hope not, because she'll lose even worse. First of all, she's not healthy.
I'd be amazed if she survived that
She's
long.
not exactly. I mean, look at her.
All right, we're going to talk about Facebook. Is all this enough? The user data that was used for this way, whether or not you voted for Hillary or Trump, do people care, and do you think people are going to walk away? We're going to ask our panelists that next on Wingin' It Wednesday, March 21st, 2018.
Broken glass.
7:25 now at News Talk 96.5 KPEL. You can listen to the Ross Report to hear more of Carol's singing at 2 o'clock today on News Talk 96.5 KPEL.
I already had one listener tell me to stick to talking.
Oh, well, whatever you want to do, as long as you fill the 2 hours, I don't have to. So
Mark and I will do backup for you. We'll do the oohs and the ahs.
I don't know about that. Sure, we have a special we can run.
Right
I might
there,
start
that'll
listening.
kill it right
Something like that. Okay, so
Never mind.
So are people going to leave Facebook over this data situation? I even saw an article this morning that said, should we call it a breach? Definitely a breach of privacy, I think, for people who didn't know. But you hear every time one of these stores has someone gets into their credit card machine and that system. It's a data breach. It may not be your credit card number or your social, but it's your location. It's where you like to eat. It's how many kids you have. It's everything about yourself. And I think in the earlier days of Facebook, people were very weary about, don't post where you are. Don't post you're on vacation because people will go to your house. And then over time, it's been kind of like, where everyone posts. What do you think, Stafford? Are people going to walk away from Facebook over this?
I think people already are starting to, but I don't know that it's necessarily over this. So you're seeing a lot less usage by younger people on Facebook as it is, and they're slightly more conscious. And all of society is becoming more conscious of the dopamine loops that you get stuck in with Facebook, right? Mm-hmm. And what Facebook's done is, let's say you put a post out there that's popular and you get 100 likes. Well, Facebook will tell you that you got 95. And then every couple hours, they'll add one more to the list.
Oh, gosh.
And what it is they're looking at interaction time, right? So people are starting to become much more familiar with how Facebook gets you and gets you into it. I also think younger people are not as concerned with their information getting out, but they're more wary of it being used in a negative way. And the other negative thing about Facebook that's happening is people are creating echo chambers for themselves. And so somebody posts something political, you don't like what it says, So you block them or you unfriend them or you unfollow them. And then what happens over time is you've slowly created this atmosphere where you're only saying things that you agree with. You've liked news organizations that post stuff that lean to your confirmation biases, your political biases as it is, and it starts to support the things that you believe and think, right? So one of the things that we saw during the Trump campaign was a picture of the devil arm wrestling Jesus. And it said, with my help, Hillary can win. And then Jesus like sweeps him with the arm wrestle and goes, not if I have anything to do with it, right? And that's the type of propaganda we saw where we equated good versus evil to somehow Trump being the candidate of Jesus and Hillary being the candidate of the devil, when in reality they're both scumbags, right? So people are much more conscious of it. I think people are getting away from it. And if your goal is to not support Facebook, then you need to get away from Instagram and WhatsApp as well, because they own all of it.
So, Warren, it almost seems like what he's describing is people are going to Facebook to be entertained. They're not going to get information. And that's why it happens. If you were just following things that were going to inform you, you might end up with a lot different thing when you opened up Facebook if you were just going for information.
That is a really, 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 really new concept.
I thought you were going to say that's a terrible thing. Rob, that's the stupidest thing you ever said.
No, because that's what the Roman emperor said. Entertain the people, give them circuses, give them gladiator events, give them parades, give them the things they want to see, and they'll do whatever we want them to do. And, that's humanity.
It's as old as
People like to be entertained. My God, just look at the garbage that comes out of Hollywood that you go and pay good money to go see and all of that stuff. And look at your newscast. They ever try to press one idea, one agenda on you? All over the years, everything they've done, everybody is biased, and it's an ongoing thing. On the deal is down. There's a lot of different technology. Stafford said the younger people are moving away from Facebook. The younger people left Facebook years ago because it was really started as a young person's deal.
When their parents started coming on and being able to see them drunk across Jefferson Street,
they started leaving.
They said, I'm out of here.
And Kim Commando, that wonderful digital goddess who was on KPEL radio, says that the young people now have got these different sites, and she named off a few of them, where that you can go through like 3 or 4 layers to finally get to the real stuff to where they communicate with each other. And some of the things they communicate with each other is really, really gross and dangerous. And that, what she was talking about, the parents don't even know how to get to those sites. Mm-hmm. And the kids do. Look, the kids pick this stuff up before we do. Not your generation, but my generation. We were all so afraid of computers when they came in, but we heard all these horror stories where somebody pushed the wrong button and wiped out the payroll for General Motors for a month. And somebody in the military pushed the wrong code and ordered 17 tanks instead of 17 cases of butter or something, and on and on. Yeah. So people were afraid to touch anything, but now the kids aren't. Just like one of the guys in the Senate or House there one time when Clinton was in office, and they proposed something called a V-chip, the chip for violence, where that the TVs are going to have this thing in there to where that the program wouldn't come across. And this one congressman got up and said, now let's be real. Now I know Stafford and you and Derek don't understand this, but this was back in the day when people had something called a video cassette recorder. A VCR.
Yes.
And he said, now how many of you right now have got a VCR 16? At home? Have got a VCR at home and sitting there blinking 12 because you don't know how to set the time on it. You got to call your youngest kid to come in and do it for you. And,
So Carol, if people are walking away from these social media, I'm not saying Facebook is the worst, but if they're going to other places, I'm trying to even think. I'm relatively active on the Snapchat. Mm-hmm. I can't even think of a time where anyone's ever pressed anything political either way, just because of the way that it works. It's just what you're doing in your life.
It's instantaneous.
Are we going to end up with a smarter electorate as these people come up because they're going to grow up starting to see? Well, I mean, I'm talking about really young, the ones who are leaving.
They'll figure their way back when they start paying taxes. Trust me. And it starts impacting their bottom line. Right now, I think we're in a transition, really, in a lot of ways, because there is so much of this. And the fact that people have been naive about it in many ways. They're now becoming much more aware of what's going on. And so they'll be a little more wary about the things that come in their inbox. You know, that everything that comes in your inbox isn't necessarily a fact, even if it comes from, it looks like a legitimate news organization, or, you know, someone is always, first of all, they're always pushing an agenda. Secondly, they're always data mining. And in this case, they do both at the same time. So, you know, it is a brave new world, and it's all going to shake out pretty much. But in terms of the usage of Facebook, I meant that when I said, you know, the thing that I like about Facebook is it reminds me of my friends' birthdays that I would never remember,
yes.
right? So I don't keep up with...
Or you wouldn't be willing to call them.
I'm the worst. I mean,
but you'd write happy birthday on Facebook.
Right, and you know, exactly. You might not have time, but if you're working at your computer and it says,
you don't really like them, but you want to
wish
keep
somebody
them in
a
good
happy
graces.
birthday. That, to me, is the best use of Facebook, really, because most people will go onto my Facebook and it's like, I sent that message a year ago. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm just not that big into electronic media right now. I mean, I know all the uses and everything like that, and I'd use it sometimes for clients, you know.
Right.
And our partner usually, and I think the way that it works best in terms of marketing is to partner with sometimes traditional.
Yep.
On air, online.
Dual.
They cooperate, they collaborate, they do very well. But in terms of these tech giants controlling so much information and deciding what kind of spin to put on it, spin has been put on it, you know, I mean, since the days of the Ten Commandments. So,
Stafford, wrap this one up for us, then we'll move on to Austin.
So one of the main data mining systems outside of Facebook was, and there's a company around here that actually started this. They would provide free Wi-Fi at events, and so let's say they went to the NRA, right? Every person would click on the free Wi-Fi. They'd put in their email address, and these guys would create a database and say, this person attended an NRA event. We know to send them pro-gun information. And then they go to
medical convention,
whatever it is, right?
Some healthcare, yeah.
And so they have developed some very savvy, very distinct systems to get out there and hit people. And look, 10 years ago, you didn't really hear the words trigger warning, right? There wasn't that discussion, right? And now we see it all the time because people are, because of the non-human communication form that Facebook is, people read comments the way they're typed out and don't read it with the emphasis that the person may mean, and it has created a lot of anger for no reason.
well, of course, you lose nuance.
100%. 80% of human communication is nonverbal.
And most of the time, if you're doing something satirical or humorous, you almost have to hit them between the eyes and say, "This is a joke," you know.
So can I make an admission here on Wingin' It Wednesday? My brother-in-law, we've talked about it on the show. My brother-in-law is deployed right now, and my sister-in-law, they live in Virginia. My sister-in-law is pregnant, okay, and my godchild is 2. So yes, she has a lot on her plate, but we're a generally fun family. You know, I mean, we kind of joke. So a couple nights ago, my wife's on the phone with her, and she was talking about getting an invitation to a birthday party. And because I had my filter off and I was just making a Facebook comment out loud, and I said, well, it's because nobody likes you. And which we would say to each other. And it caused a big problem. There might have been some tears. There might have been some, Rob, this is not the time.
Good job, Rob.
So anyway, I think
she's pregnant, Rob. She's pregnant.
Look,
That's because everybody wants you to die.
Hormones.
No.
Rob, remember this word. Hormones. She's pregnant.
Look, it's been a couple years since I've dealt with a pregnant woman. But anyway, so I just wanted to admit that to you guys and talking about the non-human to human conversation. And that was just by phone. So anyway, all right, 7:36 now on Wingin' It Wednesday. Coming up, the serial bomber is dead in Austin. And this whole thing brings back a lot of memories of other serial incidents and things we've had to watch in the news. We'll get our panelists' take on what could be done. Can anything be done? That's next on Acadiana's Morning News. Welcome back to Acadiana's Morning News at 7:39. It is Wingin' It Wednesday on this Wednesday, March 21st, 2018. So the news we had this morning is that the serial bombing suspect in Austin is dead after an explosion inside the car he was driving after he was trailed by law enforcement officers. It was a surprise to a lot of people that there was even a suspect named, that they were looking for a specific person. We do know that all of the local federal law enforcement agencies have been there. But in the note I sent you guys yesterday, I mentioned it kind of reminded me of a lot of the other things. The Washington, D.C. sniper. It's like you're almost gripped by it because you're almost waiting for the next shoe to drop. And Warren, even the fact that this guy is dead now, it might take 3 days for a package to go through the mail if that's what he was doing. So, you can be relieved that if this was the only person, but what if it was 3 people and he's just one? Or, there's so many different things. How do you handle that in 2018?
You just go on with your life. If you get blown up, you get blown up. But be vigilant. Always vigilant. Mm-hmm. And does anybody know who this guy was or what he was or whatever?
We don't know much about him
Was
yet.
he a disillusioned PhD candidate who got bounced out in his last semester or something?
We will see. We'll probably know today, I'm sure.
And it'd be interesting to know if he actually detonated the bomb and blew himself up intentionally. That would be the decent thing.
He did.
That was a decent thing for him to do, and kudos to him. And I'm glad he did. But
real decent guy.
You're a real decent guy, to at least take himself out.
But what if
he does a lot of money?
The problem is we lose the information that we could have had, as far as his motive.
Accomplices.
It make no damn difference what his motives were. Make him up.
But look,
he's dead. He's out of the way.
But
That's
I'll
what
say
we
this.
need. We're not paying for him anymore.
Talking about Facebook, though, often you don't need him for the motive. You can look back
that is
6
true.
months or a
If he
year
left
and see,
anything, right.
And let me
see
tell
where
you
it was.
something. You may find out that the FBI has already been told about him 14,000 times and they did
and
nothing. Or
ignored
they
it.
may have gone to see him 39 times and talked to him.
2 months ago, I would have said, Warren, no way.
There was
right.
a guy. There was a guy up in Tennessee back in the old days. He killed his wife. Killed his mother, his father, and his sister, and then set the house on fire. And I was in there talking to the DA, and the chief investigator was there. And I said, "Y'all going to ask for the death penalty on him?" He said, "Oh hell no, he won't even go to trial." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Oh, he was so far crazy." He said, "There's no way he'll go to trial." And I think it was the DA who said the one who ought to be on trial are those damn psychiatrists who kept turning him loose. And every time they would send him to Western State for evaluation and all that, he stayed in there for about 30 days. And then they'd, "Oh, yeah, he's fine." Send him back out and said, this guy was just a total nutcase, time bomb waiting to go off. It's unfortunate these characters do that. And one of the things I think that causes them to do it is things like you're talking about. It's all the media, it's all the attention, and it's people like us sitting around talking about him on the radio. Except I'm saying, it's a good thing he killed himself. So if all you people out there who want to do these kind of things, be sure you take yourself out at the end.
Okay, Carol.
I'm really torn as to whether they should even release the names of these people, because sometimes that's what they're going for. Their miserable lives have nothing in it, and I'll show two things: revenge on somebody, and then they'll remember my name. So I'm really torn about that. But of course, all the information is going to come out. He was 24. They did get the surveillance video at the FedEx.
I knew yesterday when Derek and I were talking, I said, look,
Austin has cameras all over the place.
I was going to say second only to Silicon Valley with
cameras,
tech. Everything.
And it was obviously at the FedEx location that they saw him. And then they got more information. And then they found him at a hotel in Round Rock, and then they followed him, and he pulled over to the side, and that's when the SWAT team approached. Apparently, he blew himself up. Mm-hmm. There could be other packages out there. Apparently, this was very well planned.
Whoever was behind it seemed to be at least a little bit intelligent.
And
to be able to.
At first, law enforcement thought there may have been 2 bombers or more because of the different signatures. But then they drilled down into it, and it looked like it was the same basic signature of this guy. It's really kind of troubling to think that, for instance, the Unabomber got away with it for so long. The DC snipers got away with it for so long. We still don't have the killer in Jennings. We still don't have that because they were very careful. This guy obviously was escalating, it looked like, and knew that he would be under surveillance at FedEx.
Reckless.
He was smart enough. I don't think he was reckless. I think.
Well, by the end, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe he wanted to be caught, but I will give the FBI this, and I give it to local law enforcement. They got out there with the information immediately, started putting out the feelers. Everybody was on the alert, that kind of thing, rather than waiting until to do the manifesto and the brother of the Unabomber saw the signature. They waited a long time. 17 years. to I don't know when he wrote the manifesto, but it was a long time he was blowing up people.
Stafford, the one thing that stands out to me with this whole thing, even watching the development this morning, is there hasn't been that star who's come out, and it almost seems like, in my opinion, impedes investigation by giving out too much information, gets in front of a camera every 20 minutes. I was shocked when I woke up this morning and saw that they were looking for the same person, because all that didn't come out, which sometimes I think gets in the way of investigations.
Yeah, hats off to the FBI and the Austin police for working together, putting aside everything that could potentially get in the way of this type of stuff, and working together. First off, my thoughts go out to the families of the two deceased people, and to the family of this kid. Right, he's 24 years old. My opinion is the frontal cortex probably still isn't developed yet. Right, so he's a kid, and he's a terrorist. I don't think he's a serial killer. I think he's a terrorist, and I don't know much about him, and I'm not going to assume too much about him. But the thought that I have is I shop on Amazon every day of the week. I mean, I get a lot of stuff via Amazon because it's easier to hit a button than it is to go to a store. And you just got to think about how people in Austin, who is, if I'm not mistaken, they're same day Amazon, right? Ordering stuff and seeing that box on their front doorstep and how it affected them, and the kind of terror that struck into them, and the kind of PTSD that you're going to see from some of the survivors.
Mm-hmm. And it was spread out. It wasn't like it was just at police stations or just at whatever. It was at all different locations.
And when the FedEx bomb went off, I think CNN made a point that said, "Hey, this was just one. What if he shipped 10?"
Right. Because it happened inside the building.
It happened inside the truck. I thought.
Yeah. Oh, the FedEx one was inside a conveyor belt inside the facility. Yeah.
So either way, that's mortifying. I mean, that's terrifying to me.
And that the most terrifying part about it was the randomness of it all. There was not a whole lot of connection as far as where they could picture the next one being.
Carol?
Can I say something real quick? Whether or not his prefrontal cortex was fully developed or not, which really does happen at about age 25, he does know right from wrong. Rational people know right from wrong. They know not to blow other people up.
I want to clarify that I was referring to the kid versus adult thing. I think the 24-year-olds are young. Look, at the end of the day,
they are young, but they know the difference, Stafford, between right and wrong at 24.
I never even made the claim that he didn't know the difference between right and wrong. What I'm saying is that this kid, I think the reason that Ted Kaczynski got away with it for as long as he did is because he was significantly more calculated. This guy had bombs back to back to back to back. This was like his going out.
Yeah, same six over 2 months.
And they were different bombs.
Yeah.
Every time.
That is another problem with profiling. The FBI on profiling Kaczynski had it all wrong. All wrong. He was an ignoramus living in a cabin and blah, blah, blah. The guy was a brilliant guy. Yeah. He had advanced degrees. He was brilliant.
All right, Warren, wrap this one up and we're going to move on.
Yeah, and sometimes they do some really stupid things, that being calculated and all that kind of stuff. The D.C. bomber you mentioned earlier, you know how they caught him? Basically, is that he had them to wire money to a credit card that he had. Now, how dumb is that?
Because you know everything about you, address, everything.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a break here, 7:48, and talk about the great Tom Benson, who is being remembered. Today is day 2 of the viewing of the visitation that's happening over in New Orleans. We'll talk about his contribution to the state coming up next on Acadiana's Morning News. All right, we've reached the final segment of Wingin' It Wednesday, and we want to talk about Tom Benson, the legendary Tom Benson, who is you're being remembered today over the course of 2 days, a Wednesday and Thursday visitation, tomorrow a private funeral at St. Louis Cathedral in the French Quarter. And Carol, I want to start with you. The what he gave, to the state in excitement and everything, and even despite the Saints' bad years and everything like that, it was an excitement. And it seems like everything he had his hand involved in, excitement. The excitement of a new car, the excitement of an NBA team. He was just a larger-than-lifetime guy.
The excitement of $400 million from the state of Louisiana. That would get me pretty damn excited.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, over a 15-year period. Look, I don't take anything away from it but Mr. Benson used that to hold it over people's heads. I might leave the state if I don't get this concession. I might leave the state if I don't get this concession. Over 15 years. Let me see. I'm checking it out right now. $198 million in increased revenue from the Superdome, $142 million in rental payments on property Benson owns, $10 million in bonuses for bringing the Super Bowl to New Orleans, $2.6 million in tax breaks. It goes on and on. They created a special taxing district in the Superdome area, especially when it looked like they were going under.
Yep.
Well, they pulled in Canal Place, everything in that area, and he got that additional sales tax money on top of it. It was like a TIF district to keep the Saints there. Now, a lot of people say it's worth it, that it adds a certain cachet to the state and all that kind of stuff, but it really didn't do a heck of a lot for the state of Louisiana. I happen to know my husband was in the legislature at the time that they were giving away all these tax breaks, and the Saints weren't winning way back when. And so arguably you could say we made a good investment. They started winning. He was able to recruit better people. Cities and states go caca over for sports franchises, professional sports franchises. It's like a big golden little bubble that they all want in their city. What is the economic return in exchange for what they have to do? Build stadiums, give them tax breaks, concessions, the whole bit. Saints fans are they'll want to string you up if you say, we're not really getting that much. The rest of the state is not getting that much economic benefit.
Yeah, that area.
It does help New Orleans.
Stafford, your thoughts? Saints, Tom Benson, all that, taxes,
I think,
whatever you want to talk about.
I think he was a hell of a philanthropist and a hell of a businessman. I personally believe that both the Saints and the Hornets add value to tourism and add value to the state in that there's a lot of money spent there that gets dispersed out to the state. And that's one of the conversations that I've had here recently is the fact that some tax money goes back to the school boards. Right. And when we have a booming economy and Lafayette's doing well, that means that we're sending money out to the state to go to other school boards. And so it's a program. Look, I think that the money that they brought in was worth it. I think that Tom Benson was a great guy. I wonder what had to happen in his personal life for him to cut all of his kids out of the will and give it all to his recent wife.
Well, they were very well taken care of.
Yeah.
They didn't get the Saints. Yesterday there was a story in The Advocate. It listed what she got, Gail Benson, and what Rita or Renee's family got, which is his daughter and her kids. I mean, the stuff that they got, all the property in Texas, all the dealerships in Texas, banks in Texas,
right.
Hunting ranches, Lake Tahoe, and a private
really,
jet.
It's all being managed in the family trust.
Yeah,
and it was decided by the trustee,
Yeah.
although they took it to court, and the court said, okay, this is what they get, this is what you keep.
Derek Albert pointed poignantly yesterday, now you know what happens when you bring your dad to court and say he's crazy.
Yeah.
That's how it shook out,
Don't bring daddy to federal court.
And look,
call him nuts.
So he had the option. He post Katrina, he could have said, "I'm done," and he didn't, and I'm thankful for that. And not only did he not leave, but he brought the Hornets, who are now the Pelicans, who are arguably doing pretty well and are building a team over there. If the NBA would ever stop putting super teams together, So, rest in peace,
Warren, Tom Benson.
Tom Benson was a brilliant businessman and all of that stuff. And but look, Carol brings up the money that he got in tax breaks and all of this, that, and other, which is what the legislature's involved in now with the governor. How are we going to close the big financial crisis loophole and all of that stuff, And I wonder if Jay Darden and them want to look at any of this stuff like for inheritance tax and what have you. If you own a business and you depreciate all this equipment over the years, and then you sell that business, you got to go back and you got to pay taxes on all that depreciation. You know that?
I didn't know that.
If you depreciate like $5 million over the years, and then you sell that business, you have to go back and recap that depreciation. You got to pay taxes on it. So why don't they have something in our Louisiana tax code that says that when you get ready to sell that business, that you got all of these tax breaks and all of that just grants, just where the state wrote you a check, that you got to go back and whoever inherits that's got to go back and recap that stuff. I go back to my big deal that I hate the income tax. I think we need to get rid of it because here I just told Moon, I said, here's a group sitting here now the perfect reason about the income tax. So everybody in this room, you got to pay income tax on money you get. It's called incoming money, right? So if you're lucky enough to have what they call the lucky sperm club or the lucky womb club, as Warren Buffett calls it, you came out of the right womb, then one day you're going to get a check for $1 billion handed to you completely tax-free that you don't have to pay anything on. And then the second thing they do is they set up the foundations. the family foundations and such stuff, which keeps them in wealth in perpetuity. And so, my God, who needs an income if you've got 40 mansions around the world, you got a $100 million jet, you got $3 billion in the foundation that you can spend 5% of it per year. That's quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
Warren, didn't you argue in support of Trump getting rid of the inheritance tax?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
No.
Now
Excuse me. No, I'm not. I wasn't in favor of George Bush and them when they got rid of the inheritance tax.
So you think we should bring it back?
I think we need to bring.
I agree with you.
We need to have tax fairness. And when you sit there and you let somebody get checks for hundreds of millions and billions of dollars at one time and pay absolutely no tax on it, when everybody else has got to pay.
Well, that was what the alternative minimum tax was supposed to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, but the tax code, the 18,000 pages of the tax code is just replete with contradictions.
Getting back to the will.
So we have 30 seconds.
Okay, getting back to the will and the
seconds.
dispute. The best will I ever heard of was either J. Paul Getty or Howard, one of the Hunt brothers, and they said anyone who contests this will is automatically cut out.
Yeah. So, and people are putting it in more and more
they
commonly.
are.
All right, it's 7:59. We have news next. Derek has headlines, weather and traffic, of course. And in our next hour, we're going to play the interview that we had. Remind me of their names one more time.
Reader General Robert LeBlanc from Abbeville and Hewitt, my brother-in-law, Hewitt Gomez, and they were both heroes. They both received the French Legion of Honor, and they've both been honored multiple times. And Mr. General LeBlanc was in the OSS, which is the forerunner of the CIA.
All right. All that's next on Acadiana's Morning News. Stay with us on News Talk 96.5 KPEL.